Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine. Don't get snippy with me.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Come on, baby, don't you wanna go?
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine show with the greatest cameraman around, Sonny Hirsch, and your host, Avi Myers.
Avi Myers, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine, a presentation of Sonny Hirsch and myself. All the videos are available on YouTube. If you go to our website at ntnm.org, you'll be able to catch them over there. The election is coming. Make sure you vote. There are 19 runoff elections in the city, together with the mayoral runoff. One of the more interesting races, and as a matter of fact, the Tribune talked about how in the second ward race, there were more quality candidates in that race than any other race in town, and I sure wish a couple of them had come up to the 50th ward and run, because we could use a new alderman here too. But in any event, the people of the second ward are doing fine. I want to thank Diane Levin for arranging to get my next guest on. He did extremely well in the first election. The runoff's coming. We're talking about in the second ward, Brian Hopkins. How are you?
Hey, Avi. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
My pleasure. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Well, I'm a lifelong Chicagoan. Very committed to this city. I've been in public service my entire life. I've got almost 30 years now of government service at different levels of government, including in Springfield. I worked for the state senate for a period of time. But for the last 20 years, I've worked for Cook County government. I've been a chief of staff to the county's finance committee. Most recently, I worked under President Tony Preckwinkle, but also for the past several years, I've been with Chairman John Daly, who has chaired that position ever since I've been with Cook County government. So I've got a variety of experience as a public servant. In addition to that, I'm a community leader in my neighborhood. I've been president of my residents association for a number of years, and that's really the reason that I decided to run for alderman, because as a head of a residents group, you're typically involved in the sorts of things that an alderman does. You deal with zoning issues, requests from developers to make changes and to build buildings. You deal with streets and sewers and alleys and rodent control and all sorts of interesting issues like that. So when the ward was gerrymandered beyond all recognition,
it's the weirdest looking ward.
Over my objections, by the way, among many others who joined me in objecting to that. But the end result of a lawsuit was that the federal judge ruled that the map was valid and it had to stay the way it is, at least for now. So when we realized that we couldn't do anything about this gerrymandered map, I decided to run to represent the territory that is now called the Second Ward. And one of the first things that I intend to do if I'm elected alderman is to introduce an ordinance to change the process by which we draw the map every 10 years. And basically take the pen out of the hands of the incumbent office holders and give that authority to a neutral commission of experts who will draw a new map based on community interests, not on the interests of the elected politicians. We can't ever do this again. The Second Ward stands as an example of the worst type of political backroom dealing. It should not be allowed to happen in the future.
Yeah, I mean, just from looking at the map, it looks like you've got this long barbell running across North Avenue, and then you've got these two, like, squared off or rectangular weights and stuff on top and on the bottom of each one, so it really is very different neighborhoods.
Yeah, it's been described as a lobster. I describe it as what you might find on Charlie Sheen's Etch-a-Sketch. It's a lot of right angles that don't follow rhyme, reason, or logic. In fact, I had the pleasure of driving the entire perimeter of the new Second Ward one day. I had my map and I had my GPS device with me, and I decided I was going to make every right turn, every left turn. I was going to stay on the border the entire time. It took me 3.5 hours to do that. And I actually will confess I had to go wrong way down a couple of one-way alleys a few times. But it really is just a classic, egregious case of political gerrymandering. Worst in the city, worst that I've ever seen. And I have actually staffed the process of redrawing political maps before during my time in county government. As I said, 20 years in county government, that's 2 cycles that I participated in, because you do it once every 10 years. And the county does it in a much more fair, open, and transparent process. The public is involved, various community groups get to have their input in it. Those suggestions are taken seriously. But the final authority is still in the hands of the incumbent county commissioner. So I do think we need to change that. It shouldn't be the politicians, whether they're state legislators, whether they're congressmen, or whether they're aldermen. They shouldn't be the ones to determine the map, because self-interest really dominates that decision-making process.
Oh, yeah.
So you've got to take the temptation away from them, and there's a way to do it. Other states do it, where you have people with expertise in demography, studying population trends, studying geography. We can draw borders that respect community boundaries and still balance the population. The computer software exists today that it's a relatively easy thing to do. There's no reason for us not to do it the next time we have to draw a new map.
Yeah, I'm all in favor of it. You know, you got to keep a neighborhood together along those lines. You've got, you've got so many different neighborhoods, and each one of those neighborhoods, there's another alderman who's got part of that. And
yes.
You're surrounded all over the place.
Yeah, it does require cooperation, with fellow aldermen among the city council. And I've talked to all the aldermen who border the new Second Ward. I've talked to some of the aldermen who, plan to run, a challenger that plans to run as well. Right now there's another runoff. And I think we can all get along fine when it comes to those types of border issues, where you've got a street that needs to be paved and it straddles two wards. There's no reason not to cooperate with something like that, because if you don't, the only people who suffer are the residents, and that's unacceptable.
No, that's definitely clear. Besides for, making it back into one or two neighborhoods, however it breaks, what other things would you like to see changed in the Second Ward?
Well, the way we deliver services, that really needs to be addressed immediately, because of the fact that there was at least 2 years of confusion over when this new ward would be effective. For a period of time, there was no one actively fulfilling the role of alderman. It could have been Alderman Fioretti. At one point, it looked like he might assume that role, but then he decided to run for mayor, and he wasn't really able to be the alderman of two wards, the old second and the new second. So he seemed to have made his choice that during his candidacy for mayor, he would represent the old Second Ward. The former aldermen from the new Second Ward were representing the new territory that they'd inherited. So that created sort of a hole in the donut effect. Services were not delivered. We have a 2-year backlog in the neighborhoods of the Second Ward, work that needs to be done. Trees need to be trimmed, potholes need to be fixed, graffiti needs to be removed. The list is endless. And that's going to be a very big job. If I'm fortunate enough to win this race, my welcome to office present is going to be an extremely long list of things that must get done immediately, because frankly, the residents have run out of patience, and I don't blame them. We've got to get things back to an acceptable level of service. So that's number one. A little bit more on the visionary side of the scale rather than just the mundane, repair of potholes. There's 2 redevelopment opportunities in the Second Ward, and they're both bookended at either end of the ward by water. One is on the lakefront along Lake Michigan, and the other is on the Chicago River, where it runs along the far western perimeter of the Second Ward. On the lakefront, I've been involved in a plan for a couple of years called the Lakefront Improvement Committee. We have a plan to add 64 acres of new green space, parkland, between Navy Pier and North Avenue Beach. Now, right now, that area is probably the most congested part of the entire lakefront. It's also the least attractive. It's all concrete. There's no beach, there's no sand between Oak Street and North Avenue. It's crumbling revetment. And we had a storm late last fall where pieces of concrete, very large pieces of concrete, by the way, were literally washing up onto Lakeshore Drive because of the wave action.
Wow.
So that whole thing is falling apart, needs to be rebuilt anyway. Now, there's federal funding for that from the Army Corps of Engineers. And they have told us that they'll rebuild it, and they'll rebuild it wherever we tell them to. It doesn't have to be in the exact same spot that it is. So our suggestion is to push that 200 feet out into the lake, and then put landfill in between there to create a new park. That would add so much recreational opportunity to that stretch of the lakefront. And since we have to do the work anyway, why not do something that'll really enhance the quality of life for all of Chicagoans? So that's the east. On the west side, we have the former site of the Finkel Steel plant. They've up and moved. Thankfully, they've stayed within the city of Chicago. They kept those jobs in the city. But they've left that area of the Second Ward where they've manufactured steel components for 130 years. There's a lot of history there. A lot of great work was done there. A lot of Eastern European immigrants came here and made a life for themselves by working in that steel mill. But now it's gone. And there's abandoned buildings there, and there's a tremendous redevelopment opportunity to really do something spectacular for the city of Chicago there. As alderman, I'm very excited about the prospect of overseeing a process by which we'll make those types of decisions. And the community will have input on that. It's absolutely essential that all the stakeholders in the neighborhood have a seat at the table when those decisions are made. I'm not sitting here today telling you what's going to happen there. I'm telling you who's going to be involved in making those decisions, and it's the residents of the Second Ward that'll make those decisions.
I do like that very much. Mickey's hands are getting in the right direction now.
Okay.
So, first of all, I'm sure you have a website.
HopkinsforChicago.com.
And you have a campaign office?
I do. Campaign office is in Old Town, North and Wells, and I have another campaign office on Ashland Avenue, 1400 North Ashland.
Very good. Brian Hopkins, candidate for Alderman in the Second Ward. If I was a Second Ward resident, there's no question I'd vote for him. I also want to thank Diane Levin for helping make all the arrangements, and it was a pleasure meeting her. And good luck in the election.
Thanks, Avi.
Thank you.